Hey, what's up guys? A little bit of a different video for you today. Today what I'm going to be doing is sharing my story on how I went from making about $28-ish thousand in retail to making over $100-something thousand a year as a software engineer slash game developer. So if you're interested in what I have to say, I will be sharing with you my advice for making a similar transition yourself in the future. So hit the buttons and let's get right into it. So to start my story, as a little bit of background, I've been programming most of my life. I started programming when I was like 11, did some C++, sucked at it because I was 11, and then did some web development, did some modding for Midtown Madness 2, put my stuff on a website, and then I went to high school. In high school, I did Visual Basic 6 and some Java at the end. Once I left high school, I did a couple of years of a CS degree. Well, I did the first year of a CS degree twice, one in one school, one in another school. I needed to work full-time to pay for my apartment, so I ended up dropping out of university and working retail for the next 6-ish years, which is where our story begins. So my story starts in, I'd say, early 2015. I recently acquired an Oculus DK2 and I've become obsessed with virtual reality, like just straight obsessed. I've been working on my VR stuff, mostly with Unreal Engine, and my friend, one of my friends from one of the universities I went to, contacts me and says he has an investor in Vietnam. So he says he wanted me to come out there, work on VR stuff. What I could work on whatever I wanted. He'd pay my flight. They would pay my living expenses, and everything sounded really cool. Now, it was a really long, complicated story that I don't want to go into right now. If you want the full story, leave a comment down below. I'll give it to you. It's 13 pages long. I wrote it out yesterday. Anyways, I got to Vietnam. Things were kind of okay. Worked on VR for the first month. Then my friend who contacted me went home, and I took over what he was doing, which was cloud computing stuff. At this point, I had very little experience with real development. So I onboarded really quickly. Basically, I taught myself overnight and got a demo working, fixed the investor relations so that I was getting paid at this point $2,000 an hour. I wish. $2,000 a month. $2,000 US a month. So I should mention that when I was working in Canada before I went to Vietnam, I was making $14 an hour as an assistant manager at 7-Eleven. A month after I got to Vietnam, I was making $2,000 US per month, which I believe is more than $14 an hour Canadian. Anyways, so that was my progression within a month. I took a risk. I got to Vietnam. I only had $1,000 in my bank account, had no way to go home, and I didn't know anybody. So when my friend decided to go back home for his own reasons that we won't get into, I'm not gonna lie, I panicked a little bit. So fixed investor relations, had money, and I worked on that project for about a year. Now, during that year, we built a bunch of different things. We iterated quickly because I was still really green here and kind of like pulling stuff out of my A. So I learned Kubernetes and Mesos and Docker and Google Cloud, and I hated Azure and I hated AWS, and I still kind of do. But I built a fairly extensive project in Golang there, using Golang for the backend, RethinkDB for the database, and React for the front end. And I like that stack. I coined it the GRR stack, GRR. That substantial project took me through about a year. For about a year, that's what I was working on. And after about that year, the person I was working with, I call him my partner at the time, he wasn't particularly reliable. He would live at the office, he wouldn't shower, and he had a bad tendency of completely tearing down all of our stacks to experiment or change directions without asking, without warning, and while I wasn't even in the office. So I'd come in the morning and I wouldn't have my instances running, so I would have to completely rebuild our stack every multiple mornings, and then get a little bit of development done, and then rinse and repeat. The final straw was one day he went to China with investors' money, with the mandate to buy a bunch of computer equipment for the office and what we were doing. Also, the investor had other projects he was working on, and he needed equipment for that too. My partner, he went to China with the money, came back without the money and without any hardware and with a lot of excuses. At that point, I was like, you know what, I'm done here. I can't keep carrying everybody, and eventually, I don't want to end up dead in an alley somewhere because a slightly sketchy Vietnamese investor thinks that we ripped him off, which was not my intent. I wanted to deliver the project. So I wrote a nice letter of resignation, told him like, sorry, my brother's sick, which was true. My brother needed surgery. I went back to Canada for a little bit and then returned to Hanoi. Now at this point, early on in my Vietnamese adventure, about a month in, I met a girl, as one does. And in June 2016, when I quit working for these people, and I returned to Canada, I was still dating this girl, and actually we had been talking about actually getting married. So I returned to Vietnam and I started freelancing. The freelancing was hit or miss. I did a WordPress plugin that generated word search puzzles. I created an Android app with React Native, which was like a Tinder-like app with a algorithm in the back end that did like product matching or whatever. I created a Docker image where you could spin up an image of an Ubuntu server with the VNC running, so that you can, with just Google Chrome, so that you could VNC into just a Google Chrome hosted somewhere, which was pretty cool. It worked out pretty well. I should mention at this point that throughout the entire process, early on when I was working on my VR stuff before working directly for the investor, and then during my work with the investor, I also did YouTube stuff throughout there. I did some, that's when you would have seen, I don't know I think it's still up, my Unreal Engine with Leap Motion, and mostly I believe my Unreal Engine with Leap Motion stuff. That's all from that era. When I started freelancing, I had actually been contacted by someone who saw those videos and wanted me to work on a virtual reality desktop application because he liked the way I did the windowing with the Leap Motion stuff. So that's when I started working on Dream Desk VR, which ended up being a 6 to 8 month long project. I don't remember exactly how long. I think we released in 6, and I had a couple months of bug fixes after that. It released to decent reviews. Most people were happy with it. Some people ran into issues. My guess was just not very powerful hardware. Maybe AMD graphics cards did worse than NVIDIA ones. I don't know. But he wasn't able to continue funding development, so it quickly fell behind on features, and bad reviews started stacking up. It's still up today. I'll show you a link. I wouldn't recommend buying it at this point because it hasn't been updated in so long that I tried using it. It doesn't. It works. It works, but the controls don't work with the Valve Index, unfortunately, which is unfortunate. If I still had the code base, I might go in there and fix the controls. But so I built that, and I did that until the end of 2016, where I got married to my beautiful wife. After I got married, I spent about a month and a half, not really doing anything, not working, My wife took a month and a half off too. We had enough money saved up so that we could just kind of relax and enjoy the first month of our marriage before, getting at each other's throats. But yeah, everything was going well. But at that point, I was having trouble getting freelance jobs. Yeah, and I wasn't finding contracts. So I ended up getting contacted by Packet Publishing to do a couple of Unreal Engine courses. One was Mastering Unreal Engine, and the other one was Multiplayer 3D Platformer for Unreal Engine or something like that. Those were really fun to make. I would not recommend working with Packet, but that's another story that you can ask me for down below. So I got those jobs that ended up paying me like $3,000 up front and royalties, which I didn't see any royalties for a while, and I wasn't finding any more jobs. So at that point, we decided that I'd move back to Canada, or we would move back to Canada, not just me. And I started looking for a job as a professional programmer, right? So it didn't take long. Apparently, this work I did for that year with the investor was valuable. It was on GitHub. I was let people could see it. It was all open source. And I ended up getting a position with a company called Embotics. They ended up getting bought out. They're called Snow Software now. But I got hired by a company called Embotics, and I was getting paid $110,000 a year, which I asked for 80, and they came back with 110. I think the recruiter I was working with upped my ask because he knew I could get more, which, you know what? Sometimes recruiters, good stuff. So at this point, I was working at Embotics for a year, 8 months, until April 2018. So so I moved back to Canada to work for them in August 2017. Started working for them in September, and I was let go from that position in April 2018. I think it might have even been March 2018. But it was only a couple of weeks before my wife joined me in Canada. Now I lost my job, according to them, because they were phasing out my position, is what they called it. I believe, however, is that I posted a spicy meme in the random channel on Slack, and it had caused a shitstorm. I think they didn't like the fact that I didn't apologize for the meme, that I apologized, I offended somebody. But yeah, they ended up letting me go a few days after I posted the meme. The CTO got mad at me. HR pulled me in and asked me a bunch of questions. It was no fun. But either way, I learned my lesson. No more memes in Slack. So I was stressing out at this point. I had no job, and my wife was leaving her country to come and join me, which she was not impressed with the way things panned out. But luckily enough, getting that good job was not a fluke. So shortly after my wife got here, I got an interview for a software engineering position at Cisco. I got a job offer at Cisco for roughly the same amount I was making before, so let's just say 110. And I was there for about 3 years. So first I started off as a contractor. Then we were buying a house, so I needed to be an employee to prove to the banks that I could get a mortgage. And then I got hired on directly through Cisco instead of through the consultancy, I guess a consultant agency is what you would call it, directly to Cisco, and worked there for another year. So in total, I was there for 3 years. And at the end of July 2021 was my last day at Cisco. Now, I am moving to a game development company finally. And this is basically what I've been aiming for a while now. So basically, since I was 11, I want to be working in games. So I'm extremely stoked to be doing it. That being said, I'm not going to share with you the company yet. I mean, obviously I can tell you who it is, but I haven't started yet too. So I'll just keep that under the belt. I'm getting paid more than I was at Cisco. Yeah, it's good. So that was my story of how I became a software engineer. Now, it's unconventional. Not everyone will have the opportunity to move to Vietnam or move to another country where costs are low and you're able to take risks or throw out everything you own and just pack 2 luggage and take off. I understand that. But there are some things that you can take from my story and apply to yourself. The first one is that you need to be able to take risks if you're going to change a career. I know many people who stay in a job for far too long because they're afraid of failure. Everybody fails sometimes, and that's okay. Secondly, I highly recommend that you try to find something that you're truly passionate about. For me, it was VR. VR pushed me into programming in my spare time, which led to people noticing I was programming again, which led me to an invitation to go to Vietnam, which led me to where I am today. You can tell me I'm lucky, but you know what? I didn't give you the whole story. It was not easy. There was an incredible amount of hard work, not enough food, not having an apartment for a little bit, and being in a country with no way home. So it wasn't easy, to say the least. Another thing I would recommend, if you want to really make a living at this and not take 10 years to get there, one is to build something really substantial and unique. Too many people are going into interviews these days with either a basic to-do app, which you've seen plenty of videos on YouTube telling you just make a to-do app, make sure it has login, make sure it has a database, and everyone's going to hire you. That's all they need to see. It's not true, at least not anymore. We've seen a million to-do apps. Don't give us that crap. Also, one thing I've heard, a lot of people are making COVID tracker apps these days. I don't know if there's a YouTube video out there that's telling people, no, the 2021 thing to do is to create a COVID tracker. Well, I mean, specifically, you need to make it unique so that they know that you can take a description, a set of requirements, and turn it into an application without needing them to tell you every step of the way. Finally, my last advice to you, and this is something that I believe and I've heard other people say, is don't take junior positions. Just don't do it. They're the same job as a real engineer position. The only difference between the job description of a junior and the job description of a regular engineer is like $50,000 a year. And honestly, if you can do one, you can do the other. Don't settle. Yes, you might not be able to be applied to every job, but if you go into the hiring process with a base salary that you're willing to take, we're worth a lot more money than $30,000, $40,000 a year. We're worth more than $80,000 a year. And if you're good at what you do, you're worth a lot of money. Good companies are willing to pay you what you're worth. Lastly, if you're new to the industry, and especially if you don't have a CS degree, build your portfolio and reach out to recruiters. You're never going to get past those automated application filters. I still don't get past those automated application filters. Before you have experience, and especially if you don't have a degree and you don't have a portfolio, you're never going to get past an automated screening. So when you submit your application to these companies on LinkedIn or directly through their websites, like the Cisco website has their own thing and Amazon has their own thing. They basically look for keywords, and if you don't have the keywords or you don't have the experience, you don't have the education, they don't even, it basically auto deletes your resume, right? So reach out to recruiters. You're going to make more money because, one, recruiters get paid more if you get paid more. You're going to get better contacts because they have direct connections with actual employers. And you're also going to have someone in your corner. So the main benefit of a recruiter is that he's going to be like, I talked to this guy. He might not have a stellar resume, but I've spoken to him. He's a really smart person. He knows what he's talking about. And you know what? Talk to him. I believe that you're going to think the same thing I do. And oftentimes hiring managers will give you that chance because of a recruiter that you wouldn't get otherwise. One thing that I know my wife was concerned about, and you know what, it's a legitimate concern, is that recruiters, you're making less in your potential because recruiters are taking a cut off the top, which is true and not true at the same time. So a recruiter generally, from my understanding, will get paid a one-time commission of a percentage of your yearly salary after you've gotten past the probationary period or something like that. Now, in theory, you could say that, well, that $30,000 could have gone directly to my salary, but assuming that you're an employee who's going to stay for at least 3 years, that $30,000 is the one-time payment and is cheaper than paying that $90,000 if you stay 3 years, right? So I don't think you're losing any money by going with a recruiter. It's kind of like if you go with a mortgage broker, they will get a commission from the bank, but you're not going to get a worse rate, right? So it's kind of the same thing. But in the end, that's actually my story. That's where I'm going to end it today. It's gone on for a while. If you enjoyed this story and you want to learn more about either my story or get some more insights into the field or any of that, there's a bunch of stuff down there. Do it now, and I'll see you next time.